Alrighty. Next up, we are going to be joined on stage by two incredible ocean advocates. And I'm so excited to introduce you to Anne-Sophie, who is an ocean activist and policy advisor specializing in deep sea mining and the high seas protection. In 2021, she co-founded the Look Down movement, a global youth coalition calling for the halt to deep sea mining. She is currently serving as an advisor to the Minister of the Sea for France. And Elena is the co-founder and CTO of SOS Biotech, the first blue tech company in the Dominican Republic, pioneering the transformation of invasive seaweed into high-value sustainable products for agriculture, cosmetics, and biomaterials. Elena is committed to sustainable ocean solutions and dedicated to positioning the Caribbean as a global blue hub, creating jobs, empowering local communities, and proving that profitability doesn't have to come at the expense of the people or the planet. Join me in welcoming Anne-Sophie and Elena. Hi, both. I'm so excited to talk with you today. I love the woman power on this stage around oceans. I want to start with you and Sophie. You both are tackling complex and often overlooked ocean challenges, from invasive species, Elena, to deep sea mining. And I want to start thinking about, for those that are not familiar in the audience, what exactly is deep sea mining, and why is it such a concern?
Indeed, deep sea mining is usually not very well known by the great public. However, it concerns half the surface of our planet. The deep sea is basically the biggest ecosystem we have on Earth, and deep sea mining is a new industry that has not started yet, but that can start in the coming month, and that aims at extracting metals at the bottom of the ocean. And the scientific community is very concerned about this industry because it would have irreversible consequences on the ocean, on marine biodiversity, from the bottom to the surface, on fisheries, on our economies, and on our global climate. And because of these impacts, the scientific community calls for a global moratorium on deep sea mining, also because we know very little about the deep sea. 90% of the species that live in the deep sea have not yet been described by science. So it's basically our last frontier, the last wilderness we have, and we have a few mining companies, and now we have Trump. We are going to talk about that right after. That is willing to go against international law and the scientific consensus to mine the deep sea. So it is a very urgent topic which everyone should be hearing about.
Yeah, indeed. We'll dive into that a little bit. Elena, I want to turn to you next. Your company, SOS Biotech, is transforming a coastal crisis into a regional opportunity. Can you tell us about the impact of sargassum blooms on the Caribbean coastlines and how your work is regenerating environmental, economic, and social value?
Sure. Well, first of all, how many of you have heard about invasive seaweed? Please raise your hands. Okay, pretty good. I'm really happy about that. For the ones that you don't know, seaweeds are our friends. That's true. We can't deny that. But as everything in this life, in huge quantities, they are a huge problem. In the Caribbean in specific, we are having something called massive invasions of sargassum. Sargassum is a brown seaweed that used to grow happily in the Sargasso Sea, the only sea in the world that is only surrounded by currents, not by land. But recently, due to increased CO2, ocean surface, and changes in currents, such as also runoff from land, it has found in the rest of the Atlantic the perfect environment, the perfect storm has been created for it to massively proliferate. So now, every year in the Caribbean, we are receiving over 20 million tons of sargassum. Sargassum is bulking on our shores, and when it's decomposing and rotting, it releases toxic gases such as CO2, methane, and hydrogen sulfide. This has created a triple crisis. This is why this is an unknown challenge. It's a social, economic, and environmental crisis. But, as Katie already hinted, we have found hope in this crisis. And we are transforming this crisis into a triple benefit for the society, for the environment, and for the economy too. What we do, to summarize, is we transform local boats, local fishermen boats, into seaweed harvesters with a system we patent called the literal collection module. And we employ local fishermen from this harvesting process. One boat per hour has the capacity to harvest 10 tons, so pretty good. And then we have a biorefinery where we extract all the cool things in seaweed, because they are our friends, to create different products for the market, for the agriculture, for the cosmetic, and even for the biomaterials. So in this way, we are taking a coastal crisis into a social, economic, and environmental benefit.
Amazing. You know I'm a fan of the work that you do. And Sophie, you alluded to this, but yesterday I got an alert on my phone that said that Donald Trump had signed an executive order giving the okay for the U.S. and for in international waters to kick off deep sea mining again. Tell us why that is a really important piece of news for us to be paying attention to.
So yeah, this is very fresh news, and we had very short nights since the announcement of this executive order. But basically, maybe to set up a very quick context, deep sea mining in international waters, aka half the surface of our planet, is managed by an international organization that is called the International Seabed Authority. It's a UN agency, where basically 170 countries are negotiating about the regulations to open the doors or not to deep sea mining. So this is how the UN multilateral system works. And this organization has been existing since 30 years. And you have countries like even the countries that are for deep sea mining, not to name them Russia and China, are negotiating in the framework of this multilateral instance. And basically what Donald Trump has announced last night is, one, to start deep sea mining in US waters. And in US waters, of course, the US is sovereign. They can do whatever they want in US waters. And in international waters. And what that means is that Donald Trump wants to go unilaterally to mine the deep sea, so half the surface of our planet, outside of the multilateral framework, therefore in violation of international law. And so this is not only an environmental issue, because it would basically open the doors to this very destructive industry, but it's also a diplomatic and a legal issue because it's basically an insult to the 170 countries that have been negotiating for years and years about deep sea mining. And what that means concretely, in terms of calendar, we have 2 months before the first exploitation contracts are put on the table by mining companies to go mine the deep sea. And therefore, we have 2 months to generate a maximum of pressure from countries. Like now, all the countries that care about international law should take the mic and speak up and go to see Donald Trump and negotiate with them. Because if they don't do that, basically the Far West could be the high seas. And all the multilateral and all the negotiations that we have been having victories on for the past decades would be useless if Trump goes to mine unilaterally. So countries have a huge step to take right now, but the private sector also have a major responsibility, and maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that context. I think it's important to hear from an expert, especially when we get those breaking news alerts on our phones. So appreciate you sharing some of those contexts. So both of you are driving change through pretty bold approaches on the ground and in diplomatic circles. How does citizen and grassroots mobilization support your work, and what role does it play alongside policy advocacy and technological solutions?
Yeah, so well, in our case, as I previously mentioned, our value change starts with and thanks to fishermen. Fishermen were the first one to believe in our solution, the first one willing to try it. And at the end of the day, they are the ones more capable and with the biggest knowledge to perform that type of job. And I always get asked like how we manage to include these communities, how we deal with them. And I promise you it's the easiest part of our job. They have amazing knowledge. They are willing to be part of it because they are the first one to be affected. And they want new opportunities. They are interested in being trained. They are interested in become blue actors. And sadly, most of the times, they are not given the opportunities. For me, it's not only how they help us or how grass communities or society can be included, is that it must be included. We should not conceive solutions without the people that are being affected having a voice on how it's solved. And this also includes, for example, students, youth people, the ones that are currently being trained to be the future leaders, the ones that sadly are going to be the most affected ones, but specifically the ones that have the biggest energy, the biggest interest, and they need the opportunities. And it's our responsibility to create them because we are in the spaces to do so.
Yeah, wonderful. What about you?
Well, for us in the world of deep sea mining, the movements of opposition to this industry have been really started by us, by civil society, by regular people. And it's really an example of the fact that activism works. Because 2 years ago, basically 0 countries were opposing deep sea mining. And now we have more than 32 countries that are for a moratorium or oppose on this industry, according to what the scientific community is asking for. And this was basically done thanks to a massive mobilization from grassroots organizations, from NGOs, from scientists, from parliamentarians, from diplomats, from ministers and heads of states, etc. And so it's a very, very collective movement that is happening on all continents that were able to push for a moratorium on this industry. And that is really an example of hope. Because when we mobilize, when we take action, whether it's on the ground or on social media, it has a huge impact. And that's why we need to mobilize right now because, again, we have this massive threat by Donald Trump. But we also managed to have a massive mobilization from the private sector. And that is as important as the political mobilization. For instance, we have financial institutions such as the World Bank, the European investment banks. We have companies such as Volvo, Volkswagen, Renault in France, Samsung, Google, who joined the moratorium on deep sea mining, saying we won't buy the metals from the deep sea, or we won't fund companies that want to go against the scientific consensus and international law. And that is as important. So as I know, there are many businesses here. If you want to do something useful for the ocean and that doesn't cost you anything, join the moratorium on deep sea mining. This is very urgent.
Perfect, and it actually leads me into my next question for you all, which is more around cross-sector collaboration. So we've just kind of talked a little bit about how important collaboration is to your work. And I'd love to hear about the role of the private sector in helping to protect the deep sea and other shared ocean resources like seaweed. So how can we partner across science and business and activism to help us do more faster?
Well, so usually we, the private sector, we are seen as the bad guys, no? And it's without no reason. Like in the past, private sector has been responsible and it's continued being responsible of many of the challenges we are confronting. But I think this narrative is changing, and what a bigger place to see that here in Change Now. We are seeing solutions, we are seeing startups, we are seeing private companies not forcing us to choose between ecology and economy, but creating spaces for both to thrive, including society, economy, and the sustainable development. We cannot do anything alone. We are all part of the value chains. We all are affected by the same things and can benefit from the same things. The academic sector is crucial. They are training the future. They have the knowledge. They have the ability to provide that knowledge. But that knowledge needs to reach the people. And to reach these people, we need the private sector. We are the executors, the one that can make products, that can make services that people can access to. And for that, we need also the politics. We need laws. We need legal frameworks that protect us, that benefit us, and that ensures that everything that is done in the proper way. And of course, NGOs and grassroots organizations to advocate for those ones that don't have voice, and for those ones that many times are overlooked, and for those challenges that many times are unknown.
Thank you.
Well, as for me, I would say that usually, as I'm an activist and a scientist by training, and usually we see activists and the political spheres like not going along with one another, and usually fighting and not being the same sphere, I would say. But as to take a very concrete example of the benefits, I think, of the collaboration between the private sector, activists, scientists, and the political people. Basically, when we started mobilizing 2 years ago about deep sea mining with some activist friends, such as Camille Etienne, which you might know if you're French. She's a big climate activist in France. We basically started by mobilizing about deep sea mining to talk about it and to say what is happening, to explain the science, to explain to journalists, to take basically a big step to show how deep sea mining is a very big issue. We managed to generate a position from France, which took the most ambitious position today on deep sea mining, which is in favor of a total ban on deep sea mining, and that was really thanks to like big collective efforts from all of us. And after that, we basically managed to work together with the French diplomats, the administrations, the ministers, to firstly explain and lead this position in the negotiations, and also to continue to mobilize other countries to join this coalition for a moratorium or a pause on deep sea mining. And it was really a victory thanks to both of us, like the activists and the scientists and the political spheres. And while doing that, we also managed to trigger like a movement from the private sector with all the companies and the institutions that I quoted earlier. Seeing that the movement on deep sea mining is growing, these institutions were like, okay, it's not even financially viable, so I'm not going to be a part of it. And also it would be against international law, accessory.
There's that. I want to ask you both, what do you wish more people understood about the invisible or overlooked ocean threats that both of you work on?
So I will say that currently we are experimenting crises that 50 years ago were unimaginable. And that will be true 50 years later. We don't have the capacity, the tools, the system prepared for what is coming. And it has happened with sargassum. When sargassum first started arriving and being massively overtaking our shores, the government didn't even know who was responsible to solve that, which ministry and which law. In the legal frameworks, word sargassum and seaweed was not even there. So what we are going to do, how we can solve a problem if we don't have even the beginning of the tools to do so? So we need to be prepared. We need to have established solutions. We need to have as many tools as possible, because of course we are not going to be able to read the future and to see it, but we can be prepared, and we can prepare the future generations for having them. And unknown challenges also are unknown because media is really politicized. We need it to be covering more the reality of the world, and specifically the reality of the global south, that sadly many times is overlooked. And we are not suffer crises, but we also solve them. And the solutions can come from the global south, and they are already coming from the global south. So we must switch also the eye to start looking to these new regions that not only need help, but they can help too. And as the last thing I want to say, I said previously that we are here are the ones that have the voice, and that we must advocate, and that we must be the voice of our communities, and that we also must advocate for things to be changed. But we are here thanks to others. I'm here thanks to MIT Solve. We are here with our exhibitors thanks to GECO Ecopreneurs Awards. I've been supported by organizations such as the Rockefeller Foundation. And I want to here say first, thank you, but also to add more people to do this. because solutions are there. We have seen here, we are not longer on the time of innovating or researching. The solutions are here. What we need is support. And we need this type of organizations that are there and now we that are here to continue seeking for these unknown challenges, but also these unknown solutions.
I love what you said. For me, I think what I wish people would know about this, the unknown challenge, which is deep sea mining for my part, is the fact that we collectively can do something to protect the common heritage of humankind, which is the ocean and the deep sea. And something that is very, very important to know is that when we take action, like on our couch, for instance, like tagging a minister on Instagram or signing a petition or whatever, it might seem that we are not doing anything really relevant because we are alone. But just know that when we are tens of thousands doing it, it has a huge impact. And so for us, basically, this is what were enabling us to open the doors to the ministries and to go lobbying them and to go talk to them and to shift the positions of entire countries. And same thing for companies. So what I would say to finish is that get involved with us, because now more than ever we need everyone on board, because we can win against the other at the other side of the Atlantic. So contact me you will find me on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever. We are going to post actions very soon on those platforms. And if you're a business, contact me as well, because joining the moratorium doesn't cost you anything and it has a huge, massive impact. So yeah, we can do it, basically. That's what I would say.
Amazing. Well, give it up for these two ladies that are doing incredible work. Find them afterwards so you can connect about it and support them. Thank you both for being here.